Hello everyone, my name is Noah Raven and welcome to the Crash Zone. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the final version of Molten MCI that I have come up with the help of a fellow theorist that will be joining us in this video. This is my first ever collaboration, so I'm so excited for this. Anyways, let's get right into how this video will be laid out. First, we'll talk about what Suit MCI is, then what Remnant is, then the evidence and issues for Rockstar Bonnie, Scraptrap, and Molten Freddy. Then we will talk about Suit MCI's issues in terms of evidence, and then we will talk about Suit MCI Story, then the issues with the story of Suit MCI, then my and our guests' final thoughts. I recommend staying for the whole video because this one is absolutely insane. However, before we get into this episode, I have made 4 parts talking about different possibilities with this topic being Molten MCI, Rockstar MCI, my own theory Remnant MCI, and Scraptrap MCI. All these videos will help with this, so I highly recommend you go and watch those videos right after this one if you haven't already. Though as always, if you enjoy this video, please do hit that like, subscribe button as we have a goal of 2,000 subs by the end of the month. While you're at it, comment down below your theories, thoughts, comments, really anything down below. Just remember to keep it kind, calm, respectful, and that's just a theory. Share this video with your friends and family as every bit helps. And lastly, make sure to go and show some love to our guests as they helped an insane amount with this theory. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. Okay, so let's get into what Suit MCI even is. Suit MCI is the theory that not just Rockstar Bonnie is possessed, but so is Molten Freddy and Scraptrap with the MCI's Remnant by the time we play Pizza Simulator. We believe this because we know that Rockstar Bonnie has to be possessed based off of his voice lines in Ultimate Custom Night.
So good to see you again, my truest friend, but now your life must end.
His behaviors in Ultimate Custom Night, and the fast facts in FNAF AR that state he was built using parts from FNAF 1 Bonnie, as well as Bonnie's Endo and Funtime Foxy's hard mode level in FNAF Help Wanted 1. We also believe that Molten Freddy is possessed due to the furnace in FNAF Help Wanted 1's entered level, showing at least 4 endos in the furnace, which very well could have been used to be injected into the Funtimes, specifically Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. We also believe this as we know that Molten Freddy has 3 animatronics within him, meaning if these Funtimes had Remnant within them, there's at least 3 pieces of Remnant in Molten Freddy. We also know Molten Freddy has Remnant due to his blueprint staying so. However, remember, this wasn't in the game, just its code, so take it with a grain of salt. However, odds are this is very true as every animatronic here fits under paragraph 4, which is most likely something that has Remnant. Lastly, Scraptrap. We know that William's heart is beating in Pizza Sim, meaning he is alive. I believe this means that Cassidy's latched onto William, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and put him in UCN as a way of revenge. Specifically, we know that William can be kept alive by a spirit latching onto him through the story The Man in Room 1280, in which a spirit keeps William alive, even against outside influences. We know that William is going through something similar in UCN in this story. Though, to really explain what's going on here, we really need to explain how Remnant works. Okay, so let's get into what Remnant is. Remnant is essentially when a soul which typically binds itself with metal is later melted down very carefully into like a mercury-like consistency, which can later be used to be injected into other objects, which in the FNAF universe is typically an animatronic. We know this based off of Pizza Sim's blueprint of the Scooper, or SCUP for short, which means Scalable Creation of Ulterior Presence. As you can see, the scoop is used to excavate an animatronic, but mainly used to inject Remnant into objects, and the way this is obtained is by heating Remnant at sustained temperature to make it malleable. If it's overheated, the effects of Remnant may be neutralized forever, with it basically now just being melted metal and nothing else. So, once it has no motion by the human eye, it's at the right temperature. Though, once this is achieved, the Remnant is lined on the interior of the scoop and is used to inject Remnant into something. However, as it states, too much of this Remnant being injected can negate its effect. I mean, too much Remnant can lead to no Remnant as well. Okay, so let's get right into the evidence for Molten Freddy. First piece of evidence.
Alright, now that I am fully changed and everything's all good, I think it's time we get into this right now because we are going to need to take some time to kind of explain this theory, Mart. Because the theory of 3 Suit MCI is really large when you think about it. I mean, it's in the name, 3 Suit MCI. It's practically made of 3 different theories / parts altogether to culminate into this theory, which is pretty big. And that's really what it is. It's a culmination of many theories put together to basically try to fix the original version of Molten MCI, since I think a lot of the community at this point has realized that it does have quite a few problems. So to start off, I want to focus on pretty much the main focal point of Molten MCI, the original pile of Freddy Spaghetti himself, Molten Freddy. So, who or what exactly is Molten Freddy? Well, besides him being honestly one of my favorite characters across the entire franchise, to put it in mathematical terms, Molten Freddy is the product of when you have entered and subtract Circus Baby from him, or I guess them, from basically the original pile of endoskeletons that make up Molten Freddy. However, we know that the rest of Ennard didn't exactly like Elizabeth bossing them around, so they kicked her out of the Ennard collection. So Circus Baby splits off and becomes Scrap Baby, and then the rest of Ennard become Molten Freddy, with both of them showing up in FNAF 6. So why wouldn't we assume that all of the other Funtime animatronics split off like Circus Baby at some point as well, and this is just kind of Funtime Freddy's remains after Sister Location? In the code, you can find a blueprint of Molten Freddy, which shows us that he has 3 security tags active, with each being a Funtime animatronic from Sister Location. Those 3 animatronics are Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora, who were all a part of Ennard along with Circus Baby. Now, like NarrowRaven said before, and like I mentioned, this blueprint wasn't implemented into the game and was only found in the code of FNAF 6, so it technically is up to some scrutiny of whether or not it's canon. However, I think that it is 100% canon to the series, and we can use it and should be allowed to use it to solve lore. After all, it doesn't exactly contradict anything shown or stated in the series, and does line up with the conversations shown between Scott's 2 websites. There also are a few minor mentions I want to make as well that indicate that the blueprint is canon to the series. In the Ultimate Guide about the Insanity ending on page 82, it states an audio file called HRY223 plays, and secret blueprints of several animatronics and devices come onto the screen. And what blueprints does it show on the right side of the page? Molten Freddy's. And on page 244, that shows Pizzeria Simulator blueprints. Which ones do they show? 3 from the Insanity ending, Lefties, the Rasks, and the Scoops, and a 4th one, that one being Molten Freddy's. Also, the 2 pages before this page, 242 and 243, show all 4 of the Sister Location animatronics blueprints, which were only found in that game's code and files, and aren't viewable in Sister Location itself, so once again, it implies that the blueprints found in the code and files of these 2 games can be used for solving the lore. Molten Freddy's blueprint also leads us to our next point of Molten MCI, that being Remnant. Remnant is something that every animatronic that is possessed has, which seems to be the main reason for FNAF 6 in a way. Thanks to HRY223, his real name being Henry thanks to the Silver Eyes novel trilogy and the other guidebooks in the series, his goal is to lure all of the animatronics that are possessed left in the series up to that point in the timeline and burn them all down within the FNAF 6 location. We can actually hear how Henry's plan came together during the Insanity ending of FNAF 6, which was the ending that showed all the blueprints as well. Now, one blueprint I want to look at in particular is actually the Scoops. The Scoop, also known as the Scooper from Sister Location, is a creation by William Afton, based on the bottom right of the blueprint having his company labeled on it. And what was the purpose of the Scoop exactly? Well, it was used to give life to the other Funtime animatronics. This was thanks to Remnant, which the Scoop stores in a Remnant reservoir as shown in section D. This lines up with Molten Freddy's blueprint, which has a second section called Priority 1, which states, with the most amount of Remnant collectively in its structure, this amalgamation of Afton's constructs is a necessary element of paragraph 4. Molten Freddy has the most amount of Remnant in its structure due to being made up of the most animatronics that are possessed to some degree. Now, though I'm going to talk about it a bit, the Silver Eyes novel trilogy is in a different continuity / timeline from the timeline the games are set in, as Scott stated this years ago, and that statement has never been proven wrong even after his original Steam post was deleted. Both timelines do have elements that are shared or similar between them, like characters and plot points. This doesn't mean that both versions of that person or thing are exactly one-to-one in both timelines, but it could theoretically give us more information about a certain element. So if the games don't give a lot of information about something, we could potentially use the novels to an extent to help us understand more about that element, and vice versa, the other way around. In the final novel of the trilogy, The Fourth Closet, here is a scene that's described to us. The table's surface was glowing orange, and the hot metal hissed. He took a syringe from the woman's hand and thrust it into the squirming thing forcefully. He drew the plunger up, holding the needle steady as the syringe filled with a molten substance, then finally pulled away with a jolt. That molten substance is Remnant, and the creature that the man, William Afton, took the Remnant from was an amalgamation of all the FNAF 1 animatronics melted together. Doesn't that seem familiar? It should, because that's exactly what Ennard, and even more so, Molten Freddy is. We can even see this substance dripping from Molten Freddy in the character encyclopedia. On Molten Freddy's page 145, if you look at the bottom of his image, you can see drops of a glowing red substance, that substance being Molten Remnant. That's why his name is Molten Freddy. When FNAF 6 came out, I never actually really understood why he was named the way he was. I really like Molten Freddy, and I still do, and I really did back then as well, but I never really understood why his name was Molten Freddy. What's the molten with? Lava or some other weird connection there? No, it's Remnant. That's what it was the whole time. After years of understanding and learning about FNAF's lore and researching Remnant even more and more and more than I ever had before, I know how it connects to Molten Freddy now. He's made of molten remnant. We will touch on this molten metal once again, but just going back to the novels really quickly, once William has taken the Remnant from the amalgamation of the FNAF 1 animatronics, you know what he does with the Remnant? He injects it into the Funtime animatronics, specifically Funtime Freddy. And what do we see in Sister Location during Night 4? If you look down at the bottom of the suit's mask, you can see the scoop, which then activates and uses the Remnant injector on Ballora. In both timelines, William Afton uses Remnant to give life to the Funtime animatronics he created and wants to study and control. The parallels are practically the same ones, just with a different method of how William collects and injects Remnant. In the novels, it's more by hand, but in the games, it seems that he was able to figure out how to automate this process. Now, going back to Molten Metal, the connection between Molten Metal and the Funtime animatronics is even more backed up with the next major game after FNAF 6, Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, FNAF 7. In Help Wanted, we can play the second vent repair level that has us surviving against Ennard. According to Handy Unit, the level takes place at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, the location in Sister Location we worked at while playing as Michael Afton. As we progress through the level, we are in an area near the boiler room, and we repair pipes that are spewing flames out of them. Once we reorganize all the pipes, we could see a furnace start to heat up, with fire starting to light inside of it, and then in the background, we hear Ennard scream until he stops.
Well done. A perfect 72 degrees. See you next time.
However, even though in-game it is a bit hard to see clearly, there's another secret within this level. Like Narrow Raven said before, if we boundary break through the level and brighten up the game, we can see not only the exoskeleton of the Funtime animatronics laying around the furnace, inside that same furnace were 4 FNAF 1 endoskeletons. This seems to be telling us that just like in the novels, William Afton took apart the FNAF 1 animatronics and melted down their endoskeletons to create Remnant and the Funtime animatronics. Just saying, I think we can have Remnant as a constant element between the games and novel timelines. It just makes things overall easier too, so that helps us a lot. Alright, now that I've completely broken down and explained the evidence for Molten MCI, it's time to move on to the next section of this massive theory. Alright, so just like with Molten MCI, I'll be breaking down and explaining the evidence for Rockstar MCI the exact same way. As Nero stated before, we already have some evidence for Rockstar Bonnie being possessed, but not only that, I was able to find quite a bit more evidence, and I think I can expand on the evidence Nero himself has mentioned before. Let me explain. Firstly, though the FNAF AR fast facts are dubious on their canonicity as of now, it's worth mentioning that Scott implied that all of the data mine information and emails from AR that weren't officially released with the game were canon, or at least we could look into them and kind of use them. So not having the fast facts be canon is kind of weird, honestly, where we're basically saying, oh yeah, all the unreleased emails are totally canon and usable, but not the AR facts? That's very, very strange to me. Especially considering that all of the other fast facts are full of information that are either confirmed at this point or information that us and the community are 99% sure is pretty much true at this point. Like how FNAF 1 is most likely in 1993 and William Afton built the Funtime animatronics. So ignoring one fact out of all of the rest is really weird to me. Now, before we do get any further into this theory, yes, I know that an employee from Illumix did say that the fast facts weren't canon, but since the employee was anonymous and the response came from Twitter/X, I like to take implications from Scott on a platform he's known for using, rather than a random person we don't know the identity of from a platform as well that is quite literally Twitter. So unless we get a more official response, we shall consider the fast facts as proper evidence, or at least supporting evidence. Now, what fast fact exactly from FNAF AR could we possibly be using to support Rockstar MCI? Well, it's a pretty obvious one. Rockstar Bonnie was developed from the original Bonnie for use in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria franchise operations. You don't really get much more clear than that, mods. It's very interesting, isn't it? What evidence is there, though, to back up that line from AR? A lot, actually, when you do the research. Let's go in order by game release chronologically, since I think that'll actually make things a little bit more obvious. In FNAF 6, aka Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, you can actually notice quite a few oddities about Rockstar Bonnie, along with the other Rockstars as well. Now, we all know the funny memes and the jokes.
Lefty! Lefty is $5!
But not only that, when you purchase Lefty, we see that the reliability risk is literally quite off the charts, or at the maximum on the chart for that matter, considering they have a liability risk of 9 out of 9, which would seem to be from the puppet being inside of Lefty. But what some people might not notice at first glance, honestly me included until I watched Narrow Raven's video on Rockstar MCI, is that all of the Rockstar animatronics have a liability risk of 1 out of 9. Sure, it's not as high as Lefty, but the fact that they all have at least some amount of liability risk is a very interesting find. Now, when I noticed this detail intrigued me, as Lefty having a liability risk makes sense, but all of the others? It's strange. After all, liability risks, while prevalent in FNAF 6 to some extent as the game mechanic, aren't exactly common in the game either. They only really appear on a few select purchases that when I looked closer made me rethink the context of the entire game. Certain items are ones that you would expect to have some sort of risk, obviously, such as extreme rides like the gravity vortex and riding rockets, but other ones are actually quite confusing. Some other items with liability risk include the discount ball pit, the ball pit tower, the deluxe ball pit. Okay, seriously, what is with the ball pits? Anyways, why I mention the ball pit is not because of frights, but it's because when you purchase the discount ball pit on Monday, which has a liability risk of 1 out of 9 just like all of the Rockstars, minus Lefty mind you, but actually, instead of your first night being a peaceful tutorial night, mods, you'll get Molten Freddy in your vents without salvaging him at all. Don't forget, in FNAF 6, Monday is your first day/night on the job, and then Saturday is your last. So after Monday, you complete it with the peaceful tutorial night, you're supposed to salvage Molten Freddy. So this implies that Molten Freddy somehow snuck into our pizzeria from the ball pit, which is seemingly confirmed from the sign after the first night, with Molten Freddy not being there after our shift for us to salvage. But you know what else is actually an item in FNAF 6 that we can purchase that also has a liability risk of 1 out of 9? Nedbear. And can you guess what happens when we purchase him on the next day/Tuesday? We get another animatronic sneaking into our pizzeria and vent system a day earlier than expected. The animatronic this time being the next one in the game, Scraptrap to the fans, William Afton officially, Purple Guy, and 8-bit minigames. Once again, an item we can purchase with a liability risk of 1 out of 9 that is hiding something dangerous inside. Makes you wonder what the Rockstars might be hiding, especially since the other animatronics with a liability risk are Mr. Hugs and Music Man, which are animatronics that actually relate to later games and books to some extent. Alright, so we have the foundation / basis of Rockstar Bonnie might having some indication that he's a bit dangerous, but what else is there besides a little dubious fact and a bit of danger indication from the game? Well, let's go to the next FNAF game, FNAF 6.5, aka Ultimate Custom Night. As we all know by this point, UCN has a lot of characters with a lot of voice lines that reveal a lot about themselves and the relationship with William Afton. But one animatronic isn't like the rest, and I don't mean Golden Freddy, I mean Rockstar Bonnie. When listening to all of the other Rockstar animatronics, you don't really hear anything unusual. Good voice acting to be sure, no doubt about that, but just a few fun remarks and Freddy wanting you to go bankrupt or he'll kill you. Pretty explicit, really. However, Rockstar Bonnie compared to all of the other Rockstars in UCN is where things take a bit of a different turn. When listening to Rockstar Bonnie's voice lines, it's like his voice has some sort of strange echoing filter, and not only that, but his voice lines in general are just more threatening than any of the other Rockstar animatronics at all. Just listen, there is definitely more intentional violence with these voice lines.
Why so blue? You know I've been true, and now I'll make slippers out of you. So good to see you again, my truest friend, but now your life must end. What a fine day to come here and say that your face and flesh I must flay. What a treat to come here and meet your face as it hits concrete. I found my guitar, now reach for the stars as I plunge it through your heart.
And Rockstar Bonnie's voice isn't just unique and cool sounding, but it's actually a detail that might give us another clue that Rockstar Bonnie might actually have a more sinister side than we originally thought. In the character encyclopedia on Rockstar Bonnie's page 59, in the second paragraph, it says, Rockstar Bonnie has a very different voice from regular Bonnie. He's more of a polished entertainer with a crooner-style delivery, a bit like a murderous lounge singer. And to add on to that, at the very top of the page, underneath Rockstar Bonnie's name, his tagline is, the smoothest killer in the pizzeria. This is another connection between Rockstar Bonnie from FNAF 6 and the original FNAF 1 Bonnie. Going back to Rockstar Bonnie's tagline though, it is a bit strange the fact that he's labeled as a killer in a pizzeria, which is very interesting since the only pizzeria we know Rockstar Bonnie is in the FNAF 6 location, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. At that, with his voice being compared to sounding like a murderous lounge singer, and you have quite a bit of evidence to suggest that Rockstar Bonnie in FNAF 6 actually might be possessed to some degree, which would make him potentially dangerous, as implied by the liability risk. But wait, wouldn't this mean that Molten MCI, the original version of 5 spirits becoming 1, is wrong? Yes. Yes, it is. But if the original version of Molten MCI is wrong, where all 5 of the FNAF 1 animatronics eventually become Molten Freddy, how would Bonnie become Rockstar Bonnie? Well, I believe that's thanks to Henry. Just like Game Theory's video on how Henry could have potentially created the mediocre melodies, I believe Henry actually also created the Rockstar animatronics.
Please accept that statement as our full legal disclaimer and absolution of responsibility and potential harm to you.
All of this being said seems to suggest that Henry might have actually gone down to Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals, the location we play as Michael in FNAF's sister location, in order to try and collect as much information and animatronic parts in order to assure as much Remnant and anything Fazbear related at all would be burned and destroyed for good. But that's a huge claim, right? Well, not really. After all, we do see that Henry did get the Scoop's blueprints somehow, and the only place that would make sense for it to come from would be from William's rental service below his house, or at least somewhere that William would probably keep that kind of information private. But not only that, I think there is quite a bit more evidence to suggest that Henry did go to the rental service before FNAF 6 and after Sister Location, and the key might be in the next game, FNAF 7, better known as Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted. Now, in Help Wanted, Ender's level did seem to confirm that William did take at least 4 endoskeletons into the rental service to melt them down and turn them into Remnant, right? Well, not exactly. Sure, it does tell us that William did take all the endoskeletons of the FNAF 1 animatronics during the events of Follow Me, but I have evidence from Help Wanted as well to show that he didn't melt all of them down to make all of the Funtime animatronics. In Funtime Foxy's Dark Room level, the gameplay is pretty much a recreation of Funtime Foxy's gameplay area in Sister Location. However, in Nightmare mode, Funtime Foxy's level now changes, as instead of just them, the room is now filled with multiple Circus Babies, Funtime Freddys, and Funtime Foxy animatronics. One Easter egg in this level is actually Lolbit with a full body instead of just his face from the original Sister Location custom night, which is pretty damn cool. But there is another Easter egg that people might not know as well. You see, randomly in this level, there's a chance of an endoskeleton appearing in the level, specifically an Endo 01 model endoskeleton from FNAF 1. But wait, why would a random Endo 01 endoskeleton be down in William Afton's underground facility? Well, it's just more proof that William Afton did take the endoskeletons from the FNAF 1 animatronics during Follow Me and brought them to his underground facility, right? Yes. However, this doesn't mean that he did melt them all down and turn them into the Funtime animatronics. How do we know this though? Well, here's where things get really interesting. If you manage to get the endoskeleton Easter egg in your game and decide to walk into it, for some reason, you don't get jumpscared by the endoskeleton, but by a version of Bonnie that resembles FNAF 1 Bonnie, who also has the jumpscare sound from FNAF 1. Now, in the game files of Help Wanted, this version of Bonnie is labeled as Beacon Bonnie, and this is a name that some of the community has seemingly adopted for this variant of Bonnie. However, I don't think this is Beacon Bonnie, or at least, not exactly Beacon Bonnie. You see, mods, I don't really think this is another new variant of Bonnie, but rather, another variant of Bonnie we see in Help Wanted already. If you played the Blacklight version of Bonnie's parts and service level, you may recognize the similarities between Beacon Bonnie and the Blacklight version of Bonnie, with the same white pupils and light blue irises, and both even having a shiny texture, while regular Bonnie doesn't and has a more soft texture. And you know what, mods? This isn't just a coincidence, because in the character encyclopedia, we could bring all of this together. On page 60, you'll find a character called Neon Bonnie, and in the first paragraph of his page, it says that this Bonnie is another variant from the Blacklight mode in Help Wanted, and that you can see him if you unlock Blacklight mode in the parts and service level, and he also appears, very, very rarely, in the Dark Room segment if Bonnie's endoskeleton spawns and you approach it. So overall, Beacon Bonnie is Neon Bonnie, who is also original FNAF 1 Bonnie, meaning that Bonnie's endoskeleton was in Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals at some point and didn't seem to get melted down and used for the Funtime animatronics like all of the other FNAF 1 animatronics endoskeletons were. William should have used all of the endoskeletons to make Remnant for the Funtime animatronics, right? He did so for the endoskeletons of original FNAF 1 Freddy, Chica, and Foxy to create Remnant for Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. But William never did so for Bonnie, as there was never another Funtime animatronic that needed any more Remnant at the time. Circus Baby was fully possessed by Elizabeth Afton, a fully intact soul within that animatronic, and Funtime Chica in FNAF 6 shows no signs in that game, or in UCN, of being possessed in any way. So it could make sense for Bonnie's endoskeleton to still be intact, especially since there isn't even a Funtime Bonnie animatronic in Sister Location. Oh wait, there is Bonbon though, the hand puppet that Funtime Freddy has on his left hand. Wouldn't that count as another Funtime animatronic that's possessed and has Remnant inside of it? Nope, I don't think so. The thing is, mods, whenever I see people try to use Bonbon for theories about Molten MCIs or Candy Cadet stories, some theorists really are unsure if they should even include Bonbon, since it seems that some people in the community are not really sure if Bonbon is possessed or not. But today, I'm here to tell everyone that I don't think Bonbon is possessed. Right, Bonbon? See? Even Bonbon says so. They're not possessed. But seriously, Mars, I really don't think Bonbon is actually possessed. And here's why.
Please accept that statement as our full legal disclaimer and absolution of responsibility and potential harm to you.
Unless what Scott Cawthon said was true, and Bonnie truly doesn't obey the laws of space, time, and physics. But I really don't want to think about that at the moment, or ever. So let's try to ignore that lore nuke of information, potentially, please no, and move on to the third section of evidence for 3 Suit MCI. Alright, in all honesty, mods, I have a feeling, and by feeling I mean pretty much 99% sure, that this part of the theory will probably be the most skeptical to a lot of you. But trust me when I say that if you consider this theory, at least this portion of the theory, for at least this video for a little bit, it actually may explain a lot of questions that us as FNAF fans have had for literal years since the release of Five Nights at Freddy's 6. So prepare yourselves for the literal rabbit hole we're about to jump into, because it belongs to a golden rabbit, or I guess golden bunny, that has many, many dark secrets. Speaking of which, the golden bunny we'll be talking about in this section is Spring Bonnie, or more accurately, Springtrap, or more accurately, Scraptrap, and actually more accurately, William Afton. Man, seriously, he goes through so many phases, doesn't he? Now, there's already been a lot of talk and very unfunny jokes, you people know who you are, about Scraptrap's design in general, but weirdly enough for a series like Five Nights at Freddy's, there really hasn't been a lot of lore talk really about Scraptrap in that regard until very recently, and even then, it's only been from a very, very, very small number of people on the internet minds. You see, when people think of Scraptrap and what he is, most interpretations for a long time was that he's just Springtrap after the fire of Fazbear's Fright, and as we see in Sister Location's last cutscene, which is unlocked when you beat the hardest challenge of that game's custom night, we see that Springtrap survived and seems to have taken some damage from the fire, which would explain his appearance in Five Nights at Freddy's 6. And while that interpretation isn't exactly wrong, mods, I don't think it actually fully explains William's experience from FNAF 3 to 6. This is why I think so. Let's compare Springtrap and Scraptrap's designs. Obviously, Scraptrap does have some core distinctions from his prior version. More bone showing, a slimmer physique, and him missing his left forearm. But does anyone know what else is noticeably different between both iterations of Spring Bonnie? The muzzle of their faces and their feet. If Scraptrap is just Springtrap with more fire damage, why would that change his face shape and give him feet fabric? Well, it's because I don't think those parts were originally Spring Bonnie's. Take a closer look at the mites. A really good look at them. Don't they look familiar in the slightest, as if another popular character has the exact same design parts? It should, because I believe that those parts originally belonged to Golden Freddy. Withered Golden Freddy, to be specific. Thanks to Stormister, who popularized this find, and Ooftroop for actually noticing these details while making his own video about Scraptrap's design, the muzzle and foot fabric from Scraptrap are an identical match to Withered Golden Freddy's own muzzle and foot fabric. Now, some of you might be asking certain questions like, why do I specify Withered Golden Freddy, or how can it be Withered Golden Freddy if FNAF 1 Golden Freddy is a more repaired version that's later in the timeline? Well, mods, once again, I have not just one, but two possible explanations. The first one admittedly is quite a big claim, but I don't think it's that much of a stretch when you really think about it and look at the details. And that is, Golden Freddy's design was retconned. This would make sense since Scott said the retcon wasn't noticed by many people, and Golden Freddy's shift between being withered or looking fixed wasn't really noticed until the FNAF movie, since those design changes were more noticed by the community. This would mean that if this is the retcon that Scott mentioned in that Reddit post, that sometime after Fredbear's Family Diner and before FNAF 2, Fredbear's design turned into the withered version we see in FNAF 2, and from then on out, the story carries on with that same design. However, what if this isn't the retcon that Scott talked about at the time on his Reddit post, and this all does have an explanation for Golden Freddy's design changing? Well, my other explanation is that Golden Freddy doesn't exist post FNAF 2 and just replicates how Freddy looks afterwards in a ghostly fashion. This explanation is partly thanks to Underscore's video on why Golden Freddy might not exist, in combination with my own research and findings. This explanation/idea comes from the theory that William Afton might have used the Golden Freddy suit instead of Spring Bonnie for the DCI, and that Fazbear Entertainment dismantled and or scrapped him alongside the toy animatronics. While I don't want to get into that theory in particular in this video, since this video is probably already going to be quite long, it has been discussed by quite a few people already on YouTube and probably other places, so I recommend you check out at least those videos if you're interested, because it is honestly really interesting when you look at the details. There is another theory floating out there that Golden Freddy might have somehow caused the bite of 87 like how Fredbear did the bite of 83, but whether or not you choose to believe that for this part of the theory is up to you, because it doesn't really change anything. All that matters is that Golden Freddy might have done something or was involved in some way, and that he scrapped with the toy animatronics. Either way, the point is that after Fredbear's Family Diner closed, the Springlock suits were moved to the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, as we hear from the phone guy tapes in Five Nights at Freddy's 3.
Hello? Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. These tapes will provide you with much-needed information on how to handle/climb into/climb out of mascot costumes. Right now, we have two specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit.
After the events of FNAF 2 get that location closed down, that being the bite of 87 in the DCI, Fazbear Entertainment gets rid of the toy animatronics along with the Wither Golden Freddy suit, and by the time of FNAF 1, the spirit possessing Golden Freddy doesn't have a physical form anymore, so they decide to use the design of FNAF 1 Freddy, minus the color differences and Golden Freddy's lack of an endoskeleton, which also does apply to FNAF 2 as well. Another explanation I have is that if Wither Golden Freddy was truly the last physical appearance of Golden Freddy in the series before Fazbear Entertainment might have got rid of the suit, that explains the reason why Golden Freddy looks the way they do in Ultimate Custom Night. That was their last physical appearance before Fazbear Entertainment probably threw them away like the toys, and not to mention, it would have been the last appearance that William Afton would have saw Golden Freddy as too. Don't forget, Moits, William was a guard in FNAF 2 as shown in that game's minigames, so he could have potentially seen the way Wither Golden Freddy looked.
You're only the second guard to work at that location. The first guy finished his week, but complained about conditions. We switched him over to the day shift.
Or, like I said before, Moits, if you go the route that William just used the Wither Golden Freddy suit for the DCI instead of Spring Bonnie, then that would also count as William seeing the suit since, you know, that's the suit he used to do the DCI.
Hello? What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
Now, I know we've gone through quite a lot here at this point, but there is still one teeny tiny little issue that I know a lot of you might be thinking right now. How can Golden Freddy and their associated spirit be attached to William in FNAF 6 if they should be a part of Molten Freddy? I mean, sure, I was able to explain certain elements of why Bonnie's endoskeletons could be part of Rockstar Bonnie and not in Molten Freddy, but how can the same be for Golden Freddy? Well, I'm about to tell you all exactly how.
Please accept that statement as our full legal disclaimer and absolution of responsibility and potential harm to you.
All of this combined together would seem to suggest that Golden Freddy and their spirit never became part of Molten Freddy. But does this mean that the spirit within Golden Freddy never made it to FNAF 6's fire and didn't get released? No, I think they did make it to the fire and they did get released. It's just not the way that a lot of people thought at first. It's not through Molten Freddy in FNAF 6, but rather Scraptrap. And speaking of Scraptrap, I think it's about time we talked about him again, since I feel like we've been talking a lot about Golden Freddy, a bit way too much honestly, and not about the character this section of the theory is literally named after. What I want to talk about now about Scraptrap in particular is how and why William would be able to repair himself after the fire of FNAF 3 and become Scraptrap by FNAF 6. At the end of Michael's speech during the cutscene, Springtrap appears, with this variant of the character being known as Dark Springtrap, a variant of Springtrap that seems to be a burnt and withered version of Springtrap. We can also slightly see that due to the fire, Dark Springtrap is overall darker in appearance and seems to have lost some parts. This is backed up by the character encyclopedia, as in Dark Springtrap's entry, it tells us that he looks the way he does due to him being possibly fire damaged, and that this variant of Springtrap is missing even more parts than the regular version. So after the fire of Fazbear's Fright and William possibly being on his last legs of life in some way, if William wanted to keep going and refuses to die, then he would need to repair himself, or at the very least, make it so he can move and remain functional in some way. But what parts could be suitable for Afton at this point in the timeline? After all, Fazbear Entertainment shut down years ago prior to FNAF 3, and wouldn't have been back until briefly in FNAF 6, and fully again in Help Wanted. Not to mention, Fazbear's Fright burned most of the remains of anything related to Freddy Fazbear besides any little remains that were sold at auction, potentially the Henry. So what could there be left for him to use? Well, it's Golden Freddy's suit. All of this even lines up with the way the Vengeful Spirit is depicted in the Fazbear Fright books. Debate about whether or not these books are in the game's timeline or a parallel timeline aside, as mentioned by Narrow Raven earlier, in the Frights books, specifically the story The Man in Room 1280, a Vengeful Spirit attaches their soul to Williams in order to keep him alive so that they can torture him for as long as they want. And what do we see in Ultimate Custom Night? William Afton being tortured in his own personal torture chamber by a Vengeful Spirit. But wait, that's in UCN, which is arguable at this point if William died and this is the afterlife or some sort of Ultimate Custom Nightmare. What about in FNAF 6, since that's where the focus should be with Scraptrap? Well, it actually still does match in some way how the Vengeful Spirit keeps William Afton alive in the Fazbear Frights books. Once again, as Narrow Raven mentioned earlier, we know William's body is still physically alive to some extent, even after him being spring-locked and burned in FNAF 3. When salvaging the animatronics in FNAF 6, there's a chance an audio cue will play, and if the animatronic isn't shocked in time, they will attack / jumpscare you. All of the animatronics we salvage have their own individual audio prompt. For Molten Freddy, it's like the sound of scraping or poking metal. For Scrap Baby, it's like the sound of jangling glass. And for Lefty, it's a mechanical whirring sound. But what's Scraptrap's audio prompt? The sound of a heartbeat. William Afton may not only be alive due to his sheer will to not die, but from the Vengeful Spirit making sure that he won't die. I also want to mention that this theory also matches up with an interpretation from Squawks' theory called Molten MCI Alter S. I think that after the fire of Fazbear's Fright, William used the Golden Freddy / Fredbear suit in order to repair himself due to the damage he sustained from the fire. Pieces like the muzzle and feet covering may have made William's body a little more stable, but in the process of doing so, unknowingly let the Vengeful Spirit attach to William. This potentially allowed their souls and Remnant to mix to the point where after the fire of FNAF 6, it allowed the Vengeful Spirit to literally drag William into a personal torture chamber to punish William for killing them all those years ago. And you know what's crazy, Moits? If the Fazbear Frights books were planned from the start to be in the game's continuity, this might have been actually hinted at since Ultimate Custom Night. Take a listen to this track from UCN. Can you hear that? That constant double pounding sound? It's almost as if it's a heartbeat. William's heartbeat. And what's the name of this track in UCN? Sleep No More. The Vengeful Spirit is keeping William in a personal torture chamber in his mind after the fire of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. The ultimate custom nightmare. Another track in UCN is called Where Dreams Die. But what does that really mean? Well, perhaps William doesn't really have dreams anymore. Or at least, not good dreams, but he only has bad dreams, aka nightmares, with him literally being in the ultimate custom nightmare. Fits well with the name of UCN, doesn't it? I honestly think this feels a lot better than if the Vengeful Spirit / Golden Freddy was in Molten Freddy and somehow just dragged William's soul down to be tormented. That would be especially weird since Security Breach implies they were all burned in different rooms / areas around the FNAF 6 location. This even makes sense with what is heard in FNAF 6's Insanity ending. Henry's audio talks about how he has to call them all back, all of them in one place.
I don't know how those tiny breaths of life came to inhabit those machines, but they will never find rest now, not like this. I have to call them all back, all of them, together in one place.
If this is referring to just the MCI and not all the scrap animatronics like a lot of FNAF theorists interpret Henry's words to be, then he wouldn't just be referring to Molten Freddy, but multiple animatronics with the MCI souls in them. This would fit with there being another animatronic that shouldn't include Scrap Baby and the puppet in Lefty that contains some amount of the MCI's remnant in spirits. 3 Suit MCI perfectly explains this, having the souls of the MCI scattered in Molten Freddy, Scraptrap, and the Rockstar animatronics, or at least Rockstar Bonnie having the most remnant with his original possessed endoskeleton. This even fits with Kenny Cadet's story's theme of bringing 5 things together: 3 spirits in Molten Freddy, 1 spirit in Rockstar Bonnie, and 1 attached to Scraptrap. 5 spirits brought back together after being apart for so long, and in FNAF 6, can finally move on in some way, no longer trapped within the bodies of metal monsters. Alright, I'm sure some of you out there probably disagree with this gigantic theory and are ready to type an entire college essay in the comments on why this theory doesn't work. But too bad for you, because I already know this theory does have some issues, which I'm about to list. Now, to be clear, I'll be going in the exact same order as I did with 3 previous sections, so that way we can break down the issues with each part of this theory, like I did with the evidence. Firstly is Molten MCI. While a lot of evidence for Molten MCI does come from the games themselves, the theory originates from the Silver Eyes novel trilogy at its core. In that continuity/timeline, William Afton combines all of the FNAF 1 animatronics into an amalgamation to create the substance known as Remnant in an attempt to become immortal in a sort of pseudo-scientific way. The main problem with this, though, is that originally, Scott Cawthon made a Steam post years ago about how the novels were never meant to solve the games, and vice versa, the other way around. Now, while that original Steam post has been deleted like I mentioned before, Scott has never actually once confirmed that the mindset he had back then is wrong today by any standards, and he has never once made any Steam post or Reddit post or any other announcement about the novels and the relationship to the game since then. So in all honesty, mods, it's kind of dubious on whether or not we should be using it, since the fact is, I honestly think that the Silver Eyes novel, the first one, was pretty much a self-contained story when you really look at it and read it for yourselves, but then the Twisted Ones, and especially the Fourth Closet, brought in a lot of game elements and really are similar to games such as Sister Location, FNAF 4 in some right, and of course FNAF 6. It's like we have stacks of crates filled with evidence from the games, but the foundation of the theory from the books is like a shaky table. The table may not collapse, but it's still uncertain on how long and well it'll stand up over time. Besides that though, the only other issues with Molten MCI are the facts that we are never shown William using the pieces of the FNAF 1 animatronics endoskeletons to make the Funtime animatronics in the games, and it would seem to throw the timing of Follow Me's minigames into questions as well, considering the fact that 4 of them would take place probably on the same night, but then somehow the other one takes place many years or some dubious amount of time later, since William would need to create the Funtimes and melt down the metal and do all of that, but then Follow Me is also maybe in the same night? That seems a little far-fetched. And honestly, this is mostly because either those minigames were definitely retconned if this theory, or any version of Molten MCI is true, or Scott reworked them to fit his narrative post-FNAF 4, and it just really doesn't show us the important parts of the theory that is kind of necessary, honestly. FNAF 4 was supposed to be the end, as Scott intended, and I don't think Scott planned Molten MCI at the time at all, as he stated in multiple posts online and in interviews. Next we have Rockstar MCI, which also does have quite a few issues. Firstly, just like with Molten MCI, one of the biggest pieces of evidence that founded this part of the theory is that the canonicity of the AR fast facts are very dubious depending on how you will interpret them and even just look at them in general. While Scott has never once said that they weren't canon or usable for solving the lore, he also never stated that they were actually valid either. Plus, like I said before, an Illumix employee has revealed online that they aren't canon, so this would be problematic if that statement is actually true and Scott came out and said, yes, I agree with that. But, once again, like I mentioned before, Mines, this is all still very questionable for a whole lot of reasons, since Scott implied that the data mine stuff released, like the emails from AR, are still valid for using and solving lore, so why wouldn't the AR fast facts be, since a lot of their information isn't really contradicted in any way to my knowledge as of currently when this video is being written. A lot of the information from those fast facts are either implied in the series, or is pretty standard stuff for FNAF's lore at this point. Plus, the fact that games like Security Breach had unused facts in the game as well, and they were later actually added back in future updates, is very interesting to think about. Heck, the Security Breach cookbook even has things called Freddy facts, which sounds very similar to Fast Facts. So the fact that AR is basically a sequel to VR/Help Wanted and is a prequel to Security Breach, and all of these facts for Freddy's universe are related to Security Breach content is very interesting to think about. So while not confirmed, you can actually make a decent argument for the validity of the AR fast facts one way or another. Very similar to how, with the novel evidence, you can kind of sway it to yes or no for game solving purposes. Though, speaking of those fast facts, the one that does mention Rockstar Bonnie is still pretty much the odd one out. While all of the other fast facts have information that would either be simple to understand, or you could probably reasonably get pretty close to while theorizing, how would you get any sort of lead on this one in FNAF 6? Seriously, Lefty over there is the janky looking animatronic, so why would we ever reasonably assume that Rockstar Bonnie was developed from the original FNAF 1 Bonnie? I mean it! Sure, I was able to make a lot of connections and bring pretty damn good evidence in my opinion for the connections between FNAF 1 Bonnie and Rockstar Bonnie in FNAF 6, but where in FNAF 6 is this hinted at in any way? Is that why Rockstar Bonnie had 2 stars? Was that the hint? I don't know! Not to mention the biggest rabbit in the room, why Rockstar Bonnie out of all the characters in Five Nights at Freddy's 6? Heck, why even out of all the Rockstars to begin with? You'd think it would be someone more obvious or important like Lefty with the significance of the puppet inside of the animatronic. Or maybe something even like, I don't know, a golden Rockstar Freddy / Fredbear for Cassidy, or even Rockstar Chica for Susie. Heck, even Rockstar Freddy would be better in my opinion since Freddy is the literal name of the series, and even Foxy, Rockstar Foxy, is always known for being a little bit twitchy or singled out in Pirate's Cove. But nope, Scott just chose the animatronic who is, sadly and honestly, the least interesting and we know pretty much the least about, especially the spirit inside of Bonnie to begin with in general, besides them maybe being named Jeremy. Just great. What we all needed. Another Jeremy connection, everyone. Yay! Another major issue of Rockstar MCI as well is the fact that the Rockstar animatronics aren't really needed to get the true ending of the game by purchasing them, and they aren't even the most expensive ones in the game at all, so it's not like they're the biggest goal or achievement for players to reach. Now, granted, the Rockstars are actually the second most expensive group out of the 4 groups of animatronics that you can actually get in FNAF 6. The most expensive group in FNAF 6 is actually the Posh Pizzeria group, with that group consisting of Funtime Chica, Music Man, and El Chip. Though, by this logic of price, this would actually imply that those animatronics would be the end goal for the game by incentivizing players to get the most expensive items by making the best pizzeria possible. Though, with price in mind, this would actually imply that those animatronics would be the end goal, or at least a goal that would incentivize players to do, since it's the most expensive items in the game, and it would require you to make the best pizzeria possible to get the most money possible, thus getting the most expensive animatronics possible. But even with these criticisms, it still leads to a point that Cyrus Squawks has actually mentioned before in his theory of Rockstar MCI. It's the fact that we never see William Afton make the fun times in the games whatsoever on screen, and we never see Henry make the Rockstars on screen, or if they're anywhere in the pizzeria to burn in general at all. I mean, we know there are other areas besides the main pizzeria we get to customize in FNAF 6. Besides the main custom pizzeria part of FNAF 6, we see the areas that aren't actually shown in the main game when we're customizing our pizzeria, like the office in FNAF 6 we play as Michael, and many other areas like shown in Security Breach and Ruin. We know there are other areas besides the main pizzeria that we get to customize in FNAF 6. We see some of those areas like the office we play in FNAF 6, which is not on display anywhere, or not even really shown an entrance or a doorway to really access, not to mention all the other areas that we see in Security Breach and Ruin. Plus, we actually see that Michael, who is most likely the character we play as in FNAF 6, has actually set up stages in his pizzeria as shown in Security Breach. And when you look at the stages, that would leave 5 spots open for animatronics, yet there's only 3 animatronics for the Posh Pizzeria group. I mean, even if you include Lefty, that's still only 4, so having all the Rockstars actually makes a lot more sense than having just 3 of the most expensive animatronics that might not really matter for story purposes, and Lefty. So overall, I think the downfall of Rockstar MCI to some extent is just the fact that the Rockstars aren't really shown / aren't hinted very well at being important in the story and lore of FNAF, considering the fact that the main piece of evidence that led me down this theory alongside Narrow Raven's help was literally cut from AR. I mean, Lefty is realistically one of, if not the main animatronic, especially a Rockstar animatronic, who you could purchase practically at any time, theoretically, if accessible, given the fact that they are only $5. Henry clearly knew how important Lefty was since his daughter was inside the puppet, who was contained inside of Lefty. I mean, Henry clearly knew how important Lefty was since his daughter was inside the puppet, who was also contained inside of Lefty, so if Henry did make the Rockstars and knew how important they were, why wouldn't Lefty be as expensive as the others, or the option that honestly makes a lot more sense, why not make the other Rockstars be as cheap as Lefty? In the end, I honestly think that what really makes Rockstar MCI hard to make as close to canon as a theory can possibly be, is just the fact that it's hinted very, very scarcely. Especially since the Rockstar animatronics haven't appeared fully since Ultimate Custom Night besides Lefty in Help Wanted 2. There is the theory that maybe they could have almost been in Ruin, but then they were replaced by Candy Cadet, but then again, those are actually just the FNAF 1 models. Sure, I have seen a decent argument that maybe they are the Rockstars, but at the end of the day, in Ruin and in Help Wanted 2, it's Candy Cadet and not the Rockstars, so once again, we don't really have a lot there. Finally, we have Scraptrap MCI, which surprisingly doesn't really have a lot of issues, but rather other ideas to explain why Scraptrap looks the way he does. Just like Rockstar MCI, you aren't really hinted at in any way at the fact that Scraptrap might have used Golden Freddy's parts to repair himself at all. Like I said before, mates, besides him looking quite a bit different from Springtrap, most people probably reasonably assumed that he just looked weird because Scott tried to make Springtrap look more human and just suffered more damage from the fire of Fazbear's Fright. And that's honestly a very valid interpretation of why Springtrap goes from looking like that to Scraptrap. Not to mention, Scott has stated in general that he isn't great at modeling humans, and in Scraptrap's design, you can see a lot more bone than when he was compared to Springtrap, which he has none of. You also have the fact that in FNAF 6, before certain material in the franchise came out, like the guidebooks and an Easter egg appearance on a Security Breach arcade cabinet, Scraptrap's official name in general was just William Afton. He was never called Scraptrap, he was just William Afton, as shown in the FNAF 6 credits of the true ending. The character encyclopedia actually even still calls Scraptrap William Afton. You also have the fact that in FNAF 6, before certain material in the franchises like guidebooks and the Easter egg appearance on a Security Breach arcade cabinet came out in the franchise, Scraptrap's official name in general was William Afton, and that was acceptable and true. It was canon. We saw it in the FNAF 6 credits of the true ending. The character encyclopedia itself even calls Scraptrap William Afton. Now, granted, in the novels, William actually does go from William Afton, in his Spring Bonnie suit, / Dave Miller actually, to Springtrap, and then he goes back to William Afton after he somewhat escapes the suit. So maybe in both continuity / timelines, after Springtrap, he just wants to be called William Afton again. You also have the fact that Scraptrap's design is not anatomically correct in any regard. Heck, I honestly think Scott actually put more bone than the actual human body probably has. At least he tried to at least make him more human than animatronic to some degree, I guess. You also have the fact that Springtrap's corpse, when you actually look closer, isn't really anatomically correct either. It's just that Springtrap's model overall looks better to most people, and his corpse isn't as baffling as Scraptrap's. But another Scraptrap design digress aside, we do see he has definitely taken more damage since FNAF 3's fire. Plus, with Dark Springtrap's look, wear, and tear, most people did reasonably probably assume, oh, he's worse looking from the fire and just looks worse as well because Scott isn't the best at modeling humans. But overall, besides no real hints or notice of Scraptrap MCI being in the games and being more noticed by the community much later after release of FNAF 6, as I said before, just like Rockstar MCI mods, there aren't really a lot of issues with this theory. Honestly, the only thing that really makes this theory pretty much not really 100% acceptable in my eyes is just the fact that there are more alternate interpretations of how Springtrap becomes Scraptrap. After all, I will say for a fact that the Spring Bonnie head in the storage closet in FNAF 4 does look somewhat like Scraptrap's face. I will say that another interpretation that I actually have come to realize myself is that the Spring Bonnie head in the storage closet in FNAF 4's minigame does look somewhat like Scraptrap's face, with it having dark metal eyes similar like Fredbear and Scraptrap actually both do. Heck, you know what, mods? Here's another interpretation that I actually thought of myself on how Springtrap can get to Scraptrap's appearance. One thing I noticed in the FNAF 4 minigames is that the Spring Bonnie head in the storage closet that the crying child is actually locked in does look somewhat like Scraptrap's face. That Spring Bonnie head does actually have similar dark metal eyes that Fredbear has, as we see in the FNAF 4 minigames again, and it's very similar to Scraptrap's, just obviously more pixelated. It even has two top teeth like Scraptrap does as well, so that's another piece of strong connection right there through design details. However, I personally don't think that that idea and a few other ones really solves every detail about Scraptrap as well as Suit MCI does. Besides, if you believe the theory that the FNAF 6 building is probably a reused Fredbear's Family Diner that Henry acquired back, that actually makes that idea I just proposed very strange to me. I mean, are you telling me William's arc is, oh no, I've been burned and I'm Springtrap and I have to go back and get some parts to repair myself. Wait, I'll go to the Fredbear's Family Diner location because there's another Spring Bonnie suit there. I got the parts. Now I can repair myself. Yes. Wait a minute. I just noticed Fredbear's is looking new again. I'm gonna go back in the location and then get trapped. Seriously, that is a very, very weird arc. Especially since we see Scraptrap in an alleyway, which doesn't mean that he repaired himself while he was in there, which honestly makes no sense if he's trapped in, like, the vents, or even in the back room like we see when we salvage him. But overall, I guess the thing that kind of just makes Suit MCI and a few of these other parts and major sections of this theory kind of a little bit like, I don't know if this is canon, is due to the fact that a lot of it requires evidence from places in the series or details in the series that are either 1, not hinted at very well, or 2, very dubious if we should use it for solving lore in the games or not. I guess at this point, that's just how the theorizing in FNAF goes, right? Honestly though, I'm not even sure why I'm so surprised. At this point, that's just standard FNAF 101 theorizing at this point. Oh boy. Alright, now that I've finally finished going through all of the evidence and issues for Suit MCI, there is one question that still remains. How well does this hold up, story-wise? After all, and I do think that some FNAF theorists actually forget this when trying to solve FNAF, Scott did not make a huge timeline for us to put together like a huge equation. He made a story that we had to piece together. The story should be, at the very least, decent and understandable to an extent, so let's see what Suit MCI, as a theory, can really tell us about the story of Five Nights at Freddy's. Now let's see, What's the best way to do this? Ooh, I have an idea. If I have it in my back pocket. Ah, there we go. Ha. Alright. In the beginning.
Hey, this is my channel. Let me explain this part. Okay, so for the story for 3 Suit MCI, assuming it is canon, goes like this. Once Henry's only child, Charlie, passed away, Henry tried to work through the pain and tried to further the business after this tragedy. Henry helped create the Fun Times to a degree, but mainly worked on the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. However, at this location, 5 children would go missing, and Henry disappeared for many years after this, as he couldn't handle the guilt. After all, how could he let not just his own child die, but 5 more on top of that? Henry was angry and sad and swore to find the monster who did this. So Henry, no matter what this monster would do, kept making new locations to try to catch this monster. Henry made a new location, the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He implemented the new suits with facial recognition to try to prevent any future crimes happening. However, 2 tragedies struck this establishment. This monster would strike again and kill an additional 5 children in a sloppy manner. This sent the restaurant to a spiral and later would shut down. They had one more party, however. The night guard changed shifts to the day shift and on the last day for the party. So when he was alone with the Mangle animatronic, Mangle bit off his frontal lobe for really no reason. Henry knew that the animatronics would just stare at adults but attack one of his own employees. Something was going on here. However, on the night of this bite, William sent Michael to work at the FNAF 2 location to tamper with the animatronics and to get some parts. However, Michael started to suspect that the animatronics might be possessed after all. Michael confronted William on this, and William denied it, saying he must be imagining things, and even though Michael was skeptical, he believed this. Henry, however, decided to try to make one more establishment. This one was another Freddy Fazbear's location, using the old suits from the first Freddy Fazbear's. However, this didn't last long due to the rotten smell coming from the suits. Though during the time Michael decided to work here under a new name, Mike Schmidt, to try and figure out if the animatronics were possessed. And he definitely got his answer. Michael went to confront William on this, and William admitted to knowing. However, not that he caused it, and thanked him for letting him know so he can go and try to help these animatronics. William, however, was furious and sends Michael into the dislocation bunker to get killed by the Fun Times, while William goes to get the parts from the FNAF 1 animatronics. William, night by night, dismantles the animatronics and brings them back one by one and sorts through their parts to melt them down into Remnant to later be put into the Fun Times. However, when William went back for Golden Freddy's endoskeleton, the 5 missing children attack and force him into the Spring Bonnie suit. Ultimately, this is when William gets spring locked, and yet he doesn't die, but rather stays alive due to possessing the suit. However, even though William wasn't able to finish his plan, he still had one animatronic to sort through and then get Golden Freddy's suit. He did have technicians that worked on the facility to make sure it's a perfect 72 degrees. William already put some parts inside the furnace, all you'd have to do is turn it on. However, it was the technician that did this. Later on in this location, all of the animatronics go to the scooper room and are scooped by the scooper, unknowingly that they were injecting themselves with the remnant of the 1985 MCI, being Freddy, Foxy, and Chica's remnant. Once they formed into Ennard, they scooped Michael and wore him as a skin suit until it was too rotten to hide in anymore, eventually getting spit out into a sewer grate, though Michael is still alive due to some remnant being left over within him. This is when Michael swore to stop his father. However, in the meantime, the Fun Times made the decision to kick out Circus Baby due to Baby wanting to make her father proud, which is unaliving children, and they were opposed to this since the spirits of Freddy, Chica, and Foxy had the same thing happen to them when they were alive. This is why they split and became Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby. They both went back to get parts in the bunker to try to keep themselves together. However, we don't see them again until Pizza Sim. Once William was officially missing, Fazbear Entertainment's owner, Henry Emily, went back to the bunker to find out what happened to his workers, and to see what he could salvage from William's work, as when he did return to the FNAF 1 location, the animatronics were missing. Just their casings were left behind, so he thought William might know something. However, the only thing he was left with were 2 dead technicians, some blueprints talking about Remnant, and a random Endo 01. He found out this Endo belonged to Bonnie from the FNAF 1 location due to the serial number on the endoskeleton, and decided to use him for the new Rockstar Bonnie animatronic that would be coming soon. Henry did this with the full intention of hopefully freeing the remnant within this endoskeleton, as he now knew who killed his daughter, those 10 innocent kids, and what that smell truly was coming from those suits. However, for William Afton, he appears again in FNAF 3. Michael works at Fazbear's Frights to hopefully find his father and end him, and that's exactly what he does. Michael tries to burn the place down, escaping, but leaving his father in the Springtrap suit to die. However, William barely survived, being highly unstable and extremely damaged, and went to repair himself at where he got springlocked at, the FNAF 1 location. He found a gold bear suit, and decided to use its feet and some parts of its head and other bits and pieces to repair itself, just to keep himself together. However, when he did this, he felt something take over him. His heart was beating again. Something latched onto him. This something was Cassidy, a very vengeful spirit that wants its revenge on William for a lot of reasons. Eventually, Henry Emily, William's old partner, wanted to end the chaos that William had created and made a trap for himself and any animatronic with Remnant within them. Though Henry needed someone to work there, and unexpectedly, Michael showed up to help him with this goal. Night by night and day by day, Michael brought in Molten Freddy, Scraptrap, Lefty, and Scrap Baby, as well as buying the Rockstars, and at the end of the week, Michael and Henry burned everything down, killing everyone, except for William himself, as Cassidy was still latched onto him, keeping his heart beating and his lungs breathing. Cassidy was able to put William into a mental purgatory-like state to torment him to get revenge for the countless decades that Cassidy was in that yellow bear suit, for the pain Cassidy had to endure. However, once Cassidy had enough fun, he let William die. That's the end of 3 Suit MCI. Okay, so let's get into the issues with this theory. The first one is how Henry got his hands on the Bonnie endoskeleton. We know he did at some point, but when and how is a complete mystery. It could have been via him going into the bunker, or other Fazbear workers going into the bunker. Otherwise, we don't really know how he got his hands on this endo, just he did at some point. Next is Molten Freddy. We know for a fact Molten Freddy has Remnant within him, however we don't know how much. Though since there's 3 animatronics within Molten Freddy, and 3 remaining pieces of Remnant to go around, that could explain why Circus Baby didn't get any extra Remnant. It's because it all went into the previous 3 being Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy, before she could get any unknowingly. With Rockstar Bonnie being possessed by FNAF 1 Bonnie's Remnant, and Cassie's Remnant and Soul being with William, it would only leave those 3 to go into the Funtimes that we know are Molten Freddy. Next is how William survived the FNAF 3 fire. As we know he did, we don't know how, and for all we know, the fire is when William had Cassidy attached to him, keeping him alive. It's a really confusing thing to figure out. However, as stated before, it seems William salvaged parts from another yellow animatronic from a FNAF 1 location, due to his feet matching Golden Freddy's feet from FNAF 1 when we see him again in Pizza Sim. So it seems that William either survived from pure luck, or something else due to him getting the parts that would have resulted in Cassidy latching onto him. Otherwise, that's all the issues I can think of for this theory. So let's get right into our final thoughts. Okay, I really like this theory. It explains so many things for the story of FNAF as a whole, such as the Molten MCI debacle, how William survived the FNAF 3 fire, Rockstar Bonnie being possessed, who the endo is in Help Wand 1 being Funtime Foxy's hard mode level being Bonnie's endoskeleton, what Henry was doing for 40 plus years, which was studying William, how Henry knew about Remnant and how to release it by visiting the 6th location bunker after Michael, who Molten Freddy is possessed by being Freddy, Chica, and Foxy, Bon Bon not being possessed, why Baby was kicked out of Ennard, which is because the Funtimes were possessed by the MCI kids, so they were opposed to her wanting to make her father proud. When this location takes place, which would have to be at least after FNAF 1, how William is still breathing because of Cassidy latching onto him, and some more things I'm probably forgetting about. This is honestly such an insane theory, and even though I came up with it, I never would have been able to make it look as good as it does without help from my friend. Which, speaking of him, what are your final thoughts, Crash?
Well, Nero, in all honesty, Mike, I feel that 3 Suit MCI not only fixes Molten MCI, but even helps to solve a lot of questions about the series that we've started to ask and have had after FNAF 4 since the story continued with Sister Location. While I personally don't like Molten MCI and think it's very questionable as a theory for people to believe as canon for the game's continuity, I think that this theory, 3 Suit MCI, actually makes Molten MCI not only plausible, but pretty much perfect with very little issues, besides general FNAF issues, of course. So, if Molten MCI is ever truly canon and confirmed to be part of the game's timeline and continuity of events, I think that this will be the version that I really hope is going to be announced, if ever, as the true version of Molten MCI. And I'm going to put this as my headcanon for the Molten MCI events, post-VR, basically. However, that doesn't mean I'm above trying to solve FNAF 1 through UCN without Molten MCI, since, like I said, I don't really like it. And I think there is a way to make the story work perfectly fine without it. But that'll have to be sometime later in the future because, oh boy, this theory took quite a lot of work. I do not want to do this for a while again. Who am I kidding? I'm probably going to be continuing to solve lore in literally like 2 days tops. We'll see. But anyways, thank you so much, Naro, for having me here. It's been a pleasure, it's been an honor, and it has been very, very tiring. I'm exhausted. I'm gonna go grab a coffee.
Alrighty, and that is all that I have for this episode. So yeah, I kind of want to give a brief timeline of events because there was a lot with this video and the production and everything, and it was a joy to do, but it was also a bumpy road for me and Crash. So if you don't know, this video started production way back in like mid to late July around there, and the way that happened was I reached out to Crash, started talking about it, and he had a lot of good counterpoints. I was like, let's really make this a good video. And he wanted to work on it. I asked him if he wanted to work on it, and it was, yeah, we just worked on it together after that. I finished my stuff, writing the script, recording, editing, around early, mid-August in there. And he wanted to have it out sometime, like, if I remember correctly, it was like August 26th, 27th, around there. And unfortunately, Crash couldn't get it done because he went hard. He took like the 4,000 word script that I wrote for just myself, like for my parts, and went from 4,000 to 16,000 words. It was insane to say the least, and I am so proud to have said that I've worked with someone who is so passionate and kind and loving and all that, because he really cares about FNAF and the people that he works with. So please go show him some love. It's like you've been hanging out with Crash for like your whole life. That's how friendly the dude is. So go show him some love. He has some really cool videos coming out in the future that are just amazing. I've been able to see some of the progress behind the scenes, and it's just an absolute joy. So yeah, please go show him some love because he really deserves it. He went so hard on this. If I find the screenshot, I'll show you. He recorded around 4.5 hours of like stuff for this, had to cut it down to like 2 hours, and then he had to cut it down to like the 40-50 minutes of his sections that you saw. So absolutely insane. Please do go and show him some love. It was an absolute joy. So yeah, I do kind of want to make a quick announcement. I have a lot of theories coming out, and these theories are going to be part of many series and things like that, and I would still like to work with many content creators, whether I've worked with you already or not, whether you're 100 subscribers or you're 1 million. I would like to work with you and support you, and we support each other and just make a fun theory video together, whether we have conflicting views, sharing views, or it's just for fun. I'm all down for it, whether it's your channel, my channel, does not matter to me. So please do reach out to me. You can find all my social medias in the description down below. Best place to reach out to me, though, is Discord. But you can reach out to me on Twitter or on YouTube. Those are really the best places in general to reach out to me. So sorry if it takes me a little bit to get back to you if you send me an email or something like that. But yeah, that's really all that I have for this episode. So again, please do go show Crash some love because he was an absolute joy to work with, and he really does care about FNAF. He is so passionate about it. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like, subscribe button, as we do have a goal of 2,000 subs by the end of the month. While you're at it, comment down below really anything in the whole wide world. Just remember to keep it kind, calm, and respectful, and to remember that it's just a theory. Share this video with your friends and family, as every single bit helps. And well, without further ado, I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day, stay safe, and as sad as it is to end this series and to stop making this video, because it has been a joy over the past couple of months, peace out, and I'll see you all very soon. Eventually gains split out, bro. He did at some point, but Crash, I swear. Okay, I'm just gonna do this. and say this for the funny. I'm not going to tell Crash this until this video comes out and he watches this. Every time I've recorded the script, I've had to like pause and stop because you keep typing and paragraphing your stuff and it forces my Google Doc to go down and I keep losing where I am as a result of it. So, dang it, Crash. However, we don't know how much. It happened again. Except he deleted something. So it went up. And it's still going up as I'm watching this. With Rockstar Bonnie being possessed by FNAF 1 Bonnie's rep. Oh my god, dude. I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna take a break. Hold on. I'll be back. About Remnant and how to release it by visiting the Sys location bunker after Michael. Crash, I swear to fucking god, dude. Oh my god.